A CAPTCHA shows up and most people read it as a puzzle. Prove you are human. Click the squares with the traffic lights, check the box, wait for the little spinner. So the natural assumption is that the CAPTCHA is a test, and if you can just answer it, you are through. That assumption is almost completely backwards. By the time a challenge appears on your screen, a decision about you has already been made and it was not leaning in your favor. The CAPTCHA is not the test, it is the symptom of a test you already failed somewhere upstream. I want to spend this video explaining how modern CAPTCHAs actually work, from the outside, the way the site and the challenge providers see it, and why the whole industry of paying farms to solve them is a dead end. This is a defensive explainer, not a bypass guide. I am not going to teach you to beat a challenge, because beating the challenge was never the real problem. And once you see how the machinery fits together, you will understand why. I run proxy infrastructure and production scrapers for a living. Real farms, real pipelines, pulling public data at scale, and having to keep running for months without becoming somebody else's incident. So I have spent a lot of time watching how these challenge systems decide who gets waved through and who gets stopped. I studied them from the defending side because that is what makes the collection I build honest and durable, not because I am trying to slip past anything. A CAPTCHA is not there to check whether you can read distorted text or spot a bus. It is there to raise the cost of being an automated client at the exact moment a site is unsure about you. It is a decision point. The site has some doubt, and rather than block you outright or let you through, it inserts a small text that is cheap for a real person and expensive for a machine. The old style is already dead. The classic CAPTCHA, the wall of warped letters, worked for a while because computers were bad at reading messy text and people were good at it. That gap closed. Modern machine vision reads distorted text more reliably than humans do, so the warped letters stop separating anyone from anything. Any challenge that is purely a puzzle eventually gets solved by software. So the providers move the real work somewhere else. The challenge is the last resort, not the first. Here is the shift that matters most. A modern CAPTCHA system does not challenge everyone. It scores everyone, quietly, and only shows a visible challenge to the small slice it is unsure about. Most visitors never see a puzzle at all, because the system already decided they were fine based on signals they never noticed sending. The visible challenge is the last resort, reserved for the traffic that already looks doubtful. So seeing one at all means you have landed in the doubtful bucket. The invisible score. The clearest version of this is the invisible scoring model, the reCAPTCHA V3 style approach. It never shows a puzzle. It sits on the page, watches the session, and hands the site a number, a risk score, roughly how confident it is that you are a real person. The site owner picks what to do with that number. A good score, let you through. A bad score, ask for a password again, or hold the action, or escalate to a visible challenge. The scoring happens with no puzzle at all in the background before any decision is shown to you. What actually feeds the score? So what goes into that number? The same stack that drives bot detection generally. The reputation of the IP and the network it sits on. Whether the TLS handshake matches the browser it claims to be. Whether the request headers are consistent with each other. What the browser reveals when the provider runs code inside it, the canvas, the fonts, the timing, the 1,000 small properties a real device has and a cloned one struggles to fake. And how the session behaves over time, the rhythm of the clicks and the moves, none of these is the CAPTCHA. They are the inputs that decide whether a CAPTCHA ever appears. CAPTCHA plays the same game. CAPTCHA, which a lot of sites move to, works on the same principle even though it is a different company. It leans on a privacy story and on its own scoring, but underneath it is still risk-based. It watches the session, forms a judgment, and only puts a visible image challenge in front of the sessions that already look questionable. The branding differs. The logic underneath is the same. Score first, challenge only when unsure. Cloudflare turnstile and the quiet check. Cloudflare turnstile pushed this even further by trying to drop the image puzzle almost entirely. It runs a series of small checks inside your browser, non-interactive probes that a real browser passes without the user doing anything. You might see a checkbox and a brief spinner, or nothing at all. What it is really doing in that pause is measuring whether the thing loading the page behaves like a genuine browser or only claims to. The puzzle, when there is one at all, is beside the point. The checkbox was never about the click. This is the part people miss about the little "I am not a robot" checkbox. Clicking a box is trivial. What the widget measures is everything around the click: how the pointer arrived, the timing, the state of the browser, the score it already computed for the session. A real person with a clean session gets a single click and a green tick. A suspicious session clicks the very same box and gets handed a hard image grid, because the click told the system nothing good enough to skip it. When you do get the grid of images, the traffic lights and the buses, it means the score already came back low enough that the system wants more before it trusts you. And those grids do a second job. The answers help label training data for machine learning. So while you sort the crosswalks, you are also doing unpaid work for the provider. But the reason you specifically were shown one is the score, low enough that a single click would not clear it. The reframe that changes everything. So here is the whole thing in one line. A CAPTCHA is not a door you pick. It is a readout that you already tripped something upstream. By the time the challenge renders, the network you came in on, or your handshake, or your fingerprint, or your pace has already pushed your score into the range where the site stopped trusting you. The puzzle is downstream of that. And that single fact is what makes the entire solver industry a losing proposition. What actually trips it? What pushes a session into the doubtful bucket is the same short list every time, arriving from a data center IP that a whole industry has labeled as hosting. Reusing one browser fingerprint across hundreds of sessions, moving faster than a person reads at perfectly even intervals around the clock. Many separate addresses taking the same path through a site in lockstep. None of these is a CAPTCHA. All of them are why one appeared. What the solver farms actually sell. Now the solver farms. There are two flavors. Human farms, rooms of low-paid workers who look at the puzzle image and type the answer for a fraction of a cent. And machine solvers, models trained to answer the common challenge types automatically. Both do the same narrow thing. They take the puzzle that got served and hand back the expected answer. The puzzle in, the answer out. 说人死不认, why solving the puzzle solves nothing. And here is why that does not work in any durable way. The puzzle was never the problem. The low score that summoned the puzzle is the problem, and the solver does nothing about it. You can answer the grid perfectly and still hand the site a session that arrived from a flagged network with a clone fingerprint moving at machine pace. The site scores the token the challenge produces in the context of that whole session. And the right answer from an obviously automated context still looks like exactly what it is. You paid to answer the question, and the question was never what was being asked. The arms race you cannot win. Then it gets worse for the solver, because the defender holds every advantage in the exchange. Issuing a harder challenge is nearly free for the provider. Solving one costs the farm real money and real time on every single request. When a solver service gets good at one challenge type, the provider changes it, and every solver has to retrain or rehire around the change. The provider sees this pattern across millions of sites at once, so a trick that starts working on one gets neutralized everywhere within a very short window. You are renting a solution to a problem the other side can reprice against you whenever it wants. The terms and the fragility, there is a cleaner reason to stay away from that whole market. Paying a farm to defeat a site's challenge is, on most sites, a direct violation of the terms you agreed to by using the site at all. So beyond being brittle, it is usually against the rules, which means the moment it matters, it is indefensible and it is fragile in the most operational way. One update from the challenge vendor and a pipeline built on a solver stops overnight with no warning. That is not infrastructure, that is a bet you keep having to make again. The honest takeaway is simple, and it is the opposite of what the solver market sells. The durable fix for CAPTCHAs is not defeating them, and it is not solving them. It is not tripping them in the first place. A challenge is a signal that your session already looked wrong upstream, so the work that lasts is upstream, making the session not look wrong. That is the only move that does not decay the week after you make it. What not tripping it looks like, and that path is the boring one I keep coming back to. Arrive on a clean network with an honest reputation instead of the cheapest data center pool. Identify your client honestly where a site expects it, rather than dressing a server up as a browser it is not. Collect public data only, nothing behind a login or a paywall or anything personal. Move at a pace the site can absorb, space the requests, back off on errors, cache so you never ask twice, and prefer an official API or data feed when one exists, because that front door does not score you and does not care about your fingerprint at all. Do it that way and the scoring stack has no reason to drop you into the bucket where challenges live. Rhythm projects are me some infrastructure in production myself, real proxy farms and real scraping pipelines, so this is the machinery I actually deal with, not theory. If you want to go deeper, the full written guides, the defensive breakdowns, and the compliant patterns are at dataresearchtools.com. Third person and defensive throughout, with no undetectable promises and no bypass how-to. So to recap, a modern CAPTCHA is not a puzzle you answer. It is the visible end of a scoring system that already judged your session on the network, the handshake, the fingerprint, and the behavior. The invisible score decides, and the puzzle only appears when that score is already low. Solver farms answer the puzzle and leave the low score untouched, which is why they lose an arms race the defender can escalate for free and often against the site's own terms. The fix that lasts is not solving the challenge or beating it, it is not raising one in the first place. Subscribe for new scraping infrastructure breakdown, and I'll see you in the next one.